Hola community, welcome to Blender Today 248. The release of 2.48 was the Yo Frankie release. It was the first Blender game, well, Blender game made by the Blender Institute back then, Blender Foundation, whatever you want to call it, and that brought a lot of improvements to the Blender game engine back then, which I hope we get to see again one day. A game engine. The Blender game engine, a game engine. So what do we have today? We have a bunch of Blender updates in Blender. What's new in Blender today? 261 commits, of which 26 were fixes, cleanups, 66 changes were just cleanups, and there were some refactors, there is some optimizations, there is some UI changes that the community have been waiting for a very long time, or more has been waiting with excitement. A lot of I hope people are gonna be happy about that one. Also because it makes it into Blender 4.1, which it's going to be beta, like enter beta, which means no new features, just bug fixes in 2 days, on Wednesday, like now on the 7th. So that means that this week we are going to have 4.2 alpha in like no time. So that also is gonna be quite of a change. So are you looking forward to it? I am in a bit. I am actually, because 4.1 is the release where like 4.0 gets stabilized. There is a lot of improvements in performance. There is baking for geometry nodes, where it's not like what was promised, which was even X. Well, Gris Pencil was never promised, I think, for 4.1. It was always like, okay, later. But yeah, good to see a release that is focused on improvements in terms of performance and making it more stable. So that being said, before going into the actual what's new in Blender, I just want to mention that the creators who share, so Blender Studio, in the blog there is a blog post about retopology tools, retopo tools, that the team has built in-house and they released. So you can sculpt like the studio people does here. It's an add-on, so well, it's an add-on also, but it's also a bunch of no, it's not an add-on, it's asset, geometry nodes, modifiers, assets. So you should have a look at the blog post, studio.blender.org/blog. All right, next. Well, no, next actually. Let's see what's new in Blender as of today. Let's go with the A4 add-on. Yeah, there when installing add-ons, it could fail if by any reason when you made the zip file, it contained a file called __init __, which is the name that files like Python files should have if they are part of an add-on that has its own folder, unless they are like a very specific one zip file, one Python file add-on, that it could fail because it has to be inside a folder if you want to name if you have multiple files, and that has been fixed. The A4 animation only has a couple, well, it has more changes actually. If you go to blender.community, you will see that there are more changes than the ones that I'm mentioning. Actually, all 261 are visible here in the blog post. There, you can read all of them. So I'm gonna mention only a few. In animation, there is 2 changes. One, bone collections. Well, this is more a fix than an actual feature. It's bone collections are going to store the expanded and collapsed state in the DNA. So nice. Otherwise, it would be always collapsed or always expanded in the whenever you save your file and open it again. And properties dialog titles. This is a change related to another change I'm going to mention in the user interface that allows not only Blender, but any add-on to have nicer dialogues, in this case for collections, and for the calculate paths. In this case, the pop-ups look like this. So instead of having one giant OK button like they used to, now they have these two buttons, one with cancel. If you're on Linux or on Mac, the button is on the right side like it should be. And Windows, they have different guidelines, so they put it on the left side so it's consistent with the operating system. And also the name, the title of this operator should be more descriptive. This change only applies to these two operators in the animation side of Blender, but the change, the internal change, was done in the actual UI code. And you can look at the code if you're a developer and you want to introduce this in your patches. You can by following this. Super nice. Let's see what else is new. That's it with A. B for build. Well, build, this is a change that it's only if you build Blender. However, when you build Blender, or when you see the changes that are done in libraries, you also get to have a sneak peek into new features. Or for example, let's see, B for build. They updated OpenColor.io to 2.3.2. So instead of 2.3.0, it's now 2.3.2. OpenColor.io is the library that manages all sorts of saving, exporting images, and loading images in Blender. Blender used to have its own code for loading a JPEG or any type of image file. And now it uses this library, so it's more consistent with other software, and also you have to do less work. In this case, OpenColor.io made a fix. The library has a fix for detection of AVX instruction support, and now this has been applied to Blender. What is more interesting though is the next change, upgrade to Open Image Denoise 2.2 RC, so a release candidate. Nice. I think this is just to make it in 3.1. But look at the description. This Open Image Denoise improvement, like the new version, basically went from 2.1 to 2.2, includes support for Meteor Lake, which is the Intel's processors for the Intel Core Ultra mobile processors that were launched at the end of next year. The CUDA driver API, so NVIDIA, and Metal, which will be enabled with another patch that is being worked on. This means that Metal, CUDA, Meteor Lake should soon support hardware denoising. Nice. So like optics uses NVIDIA optics. Well, Open Image Denoise, which is the denoiser that Blender includes, that is only CPU, soon will have hardware, also GPU support. Isn't that amazing? Cheers, people. The next change, let's go C for Compositor. Wow, massive performance improvement in the double edge mask node. It's been rewritten. I guess also has to do with like CPU and GPU implementation, but this change is so let's see how much faster it is. For a 1K simple mask, so 1000 pixels, 1000 simple mask, it's about 50 times faster, only 50 times faster. For a 1K complex mask, so a lot of points, a lot of, in this case, 650 times faster. Nice. Omar has been on a roll. The next change also by him, it unifies the behavior of the C combine node across CPU and GPU. However, it doesn't only make it better and unified. However, it also changes it also fixes it basically, because on his comment here it says that the C-combine node only worked if the first image was closer. So the first one, the first socket was closer, since it sampled the alpha channel from it and used it for mixing. Instead, the mix factor should depend on the closer pixel, like the CPU implementation. Nice. So it uses the one that is closest regardless of which socket it is. So nice. Another change, unify bilateral blur across CPU and GPU, also by Omar, and not only unifies it but also makes it better. Awesome. Another one, better anti-aliasing for all the nodes. Basically, this patch makes it so it uses SMAA instead of the scale 3x based operation, which is it's kind of a hack, and the new one it's more accurate, and now it's consistent across all nodes. And another change, this one by Sergey, makes it so you can so open image denoiser can be cancelled faster. So basically you can cancel, you can finish it faster, and it should give more instant feedback to the user whenever you have whenever you're not only when you stop the composite, but basically when you make any change in the compositor, it should give you feedback earlier, because the denoising could sometimes get stuck working on it. Now, yay, interactiveness. What do you call it? No, responsive. That's the word you use. Responsiveness. It's confusing because I'm used to hear about responsive when it has to do with web. Like a website that is responsive. It's not this kind of response. Anyway, next, C for cycles. Okay, this has to do with other software mainly, like our Material X, I guess. So separate the caustics controls for generalized slick. How do you say this? It's something that is slick and is German, Dutch. What is this? Slick. This allows users to turn off reflective and refractive caustics separately from each other when using the generalized slick material. This will impact the principal BSDF and glass BSDF along with those custom open shading language scripts. Next, increase the minimum Intel GPU driver version on Windows. This has to do with the change that I mentioned, well, similar to the changes that I did before, but also has to do with some Arc and Meteor Lake devices that they need to have their drivers updated. So now Cycles is going to tell you that, hey, you need to update your drivers. Okay, next change. Speaking of OneAPI and Intel, there should be a performance improvement from 0 to 15%. So along those lines, basically the default value of calculating or sorting some partition elements wasn't optimal for Intel GPUs, and now this should give you a nice little boost. So E4, well, no, EV, well, let's mention EV next had some improvements, but not as like many as we are used to. There has been cleanups and there has been some changes, but the best news that I have about EV is that the main developer is back in town and full speed, so we are gonna see more changes in EV soon. I mean, back as it never left, like back on holidays, like regular people doing Christmas, right? Like humans. Let's see what else. Speaking of other in under development areas in Blender, G4 Grease Pencil. A bunch of modifiers have been introduced, well, reintroduced. The noise modifier, no functional changes. The mirror modifier, the thickness modifier, the array modifier as well, working as expected, all features working how they should be. This one by Yiming, the previous one by Lucas. And operators, Matias Mendiola added the PR to implement the move to layer operator from Grease Pencil to Oh no, Matthias is coding. There goes another artist. You know, it's every time an artist. No, I mean, of course, he's still an artist, but it happens, you know, like when artists become developers. It's a good thing that we have both, and that an artist develops, but we shouldn't leave aside the artistic side of things, and also we can continue improving the tool. That's why on my free time I also try to do as much Blender as possible and use the tools, because imagine using software made by people who don't use the software. Imagine. Well, that's the case for most of software out there, most of it, and not only graphic software. But let's continue. And that's let me go full screen. And that's why it is important to support the Blender Studio, because there is a bunch of people down here as in the floor underneath this floor, using Blender every day and using main every day. They don't even know what a release is. What is a release? They don't even see the splash change because they use main all the time. So it's like they've been stuck on the same Blender for how long? 2 years? Because the splash for the main, or like the under development branches, only changes every 2 years, and when a major release happens. Next, so more grease pencil. Pratic added isolate layers. It ported this operator. The vertex group operators also have been ported by Lucas Tone. Casey ported the stroke reorder operator, and Pratic implemented the dope sheet UI, like the regular dope sheet UI user interface. All right, next let's go with G for geometry nodes. Bunch of changes this week. There is all kinds of stuff. There is performance, and there is even a new node in town, which has a funny name. Like when I read it, it was like, wait, am I reading this right? There is a new node called rotate rotation. What else could you rotate? Well, you can rotate all kinds of things, right? You can rotate vectors. Is vector a rotation? Yeah, it's a kind of. But anyways, this is meant as a replacement for the rotate Euler node. Overall, it should be more performant, and the clarity given by the separate socket type should help distinguish its purpose. The rotate Euler node is removed from search and the add menu by this commit. In the future, it can be versioned away. That isn't done now to avoid breaking API changes and to make this commit less risky. So the rotations are rotated, so you can expect your rotations to be rotated after using the rotate rotation node. How does it look? Well, let's go. I happen to have a fresh Blender right here, which I just compiled. And let's look for it. Rotate rotation. So it's a rotation socket in, to, and then output. What other kind of rotations you have? Well, you have vector rotate in that case, but that's a separate. Let's go one that starts with rotate. Rotate vector, which is different from vector rotate, which is a utility. So many options for rotation here. Next. All right, that's the only new node we have this week, but there is a bunch of updates. All right, so the next change, I could read it as support or materials no longer get lost when using baking. It could, like it was one of the big issues with baking so far, even though it's a new feature and it was still in alpha, so it's not its fault. It's alpha. Was that when baking data in geometry nodes, you would lose the materials. However, you think of that as like, oh, it's a small thing, right? Why are materials lost? Maybe it's just an easy fix they can do. Not so far. This change, it's more than that. It supports baking data block references. just the length of the commit is of the commit log is huge and very descriptive, but the change itself is like 1,000 lines of code, because it's just not materials that don't get lost. It's any data block, it's still referenced at the end of the baking data. So huge patch by Jack. Thank you to Jack. Also, related to baking, baking now supports volume geometry. Just like with other geometry types, materials are preserved. Just know that when using the written standalone VDV file, the OpenVDV files, materials are not preserved. And finally, an optimization for baking. Deduplicate arrays in bake data. What does it mean? It means that your bakes, are going to be lighter. For example, in a test that Jack did that used to require almost 3 gigabytes of space in your disk, now only requires 500 megabytes. Nice. And there's even more, if you look at the pull request, I think Hans also did some more tests, and super nice. I was wondering if because they mentioned like how many gigs and how much memory it uses. I wonder if that data, we could also have it as information here. Would that be useful? Probably it would, because like how else would you know how much memory are you using? Or oh, maybe this is shown in the panel. I'm not gonna check now, but maybe it's shown in the actual panel. But I think it would be useful to know, right? How much memory you're using, because you can easily run out of memory. Next. Oh, and last change related to bake is that now the bake items are going to store the names, the item names, on disk. That means that in the future, this will allow changing the name and reordering the sockets without breaking the bake data. And even further into the future, if we want to have some kind of import bake node, it ideally recreates the output sockets and the names correctly. So future proofing. All right, time to switch to performance. This one by Hans, the king of performance lately. Well, lately, for many releases already. Improve extrude node vertex groups performance. How much faster is the extruding node? Well, in a 1 million vertices mesh with 20 vertex groups, Hans observed an improvement of the node's runtime from 400 milliseconds to 64 milliseconds. That's much faster. How much faster in percentage are we talking, chat? Who can do the math real quick? Okay, next. Improve attribute text overlay. Okay, this is a UI change which we can actually show in the UI. Remember last week I mentioned, or some time ago, I mentioned that the text here now has a nicer shadow. The text here and the info text that we see in the statistics now is more readable. Well, this has been applied to this concept has been applied to the attributes. So if we preview those attributes, let's see, how can we do it? Attribute statistics, and if I preview any of this, and the default queue has some data, right? Has the, let's see, do I have a queue? I do. Oh, I didn't have the connected geometry. There you go. So if I preview this, the attribute text, now this is more readable. Nice. And it's drawn under the text, that's cool. Awesome. Huh. Nice. A cloud of text. Hey, there is one that is darker. Why? Is it over? Is it just me, or this one in particular is? Let me see if I can. Yeah, for some reason, this particular text, it is darker. Oh no, I think this is gonna bother some UI developers. Way too much, ignore it. It's not a big deal, guys. Don't spend too much time. It's maybe it's the text is twice, it's overlapped, or maybe I have too much. Wait, what if maybe I have two vertices on top of each other. Yes, maybe that was it. Although I was transforming it. Yeah. Anyway, super nice change. First and the last vertex counted. Maybe that was it. So according to ChatGPT, 1,150% faster, says Martin. Thank you, Martin. Or Martin, wherever you are from. In Argentina we say Martin. Well, in Spanish we say Martin. Unless it's a last name. Last name usually is Well, no. Anyway, next change. It's a. Oh, I mentioned this last week when the menu node was introduced. I mentioned like would be nice to if the menu node had a couple entries by default, and now it does. So the adding a new menu switch node now has 2 entries by default, which it's super nice. I'm just I noticed that there was some alignment issue, but no, I think it's fine. Next, last but not least, a tiny UI change makes it so it's just a label. The simulation zones, the repeat and the simulation zones now no longer include the word output or input in it, because it's kind of obvious, because the node moves with it. I think if the output and the input, the outline basically moves with it. So if I add a simulation zone, which is in simulation zone, yeah, exactly. So now it doesn't say input and output. So that's a bit more clean. But I was thinking actually, because there is already a color, like maybe it would be nice, it would look nicer if I know we use black or dark for input and output nodes, but maybe in this case it would make sense to have the simulation, the header of this, to have this color as well, right? So you can spot it more easily at a distance, or not. I think it could look nice. And the same for the repeat. I think that is in utility, right? Yeah, repeat zone. This could have the same, like this color there. How would that look? Next. For internationalizations, as usual, there has been the web-late platform has been updated, and the UI has been updated to use the latest version from the web-late platform. Let's see. L for library override. Jack Luke fixed a performance issue. Well, he noticed that when testing a file that has a large number of bones using overrides, apparently library override was comparing a property of the bones, like if the bone is in an IK chain or not, and that was adding overhead to loading the file, to applying overrides, which it doesn't really make sense that it checks for if something is in an IK chain or not, because it's not something you can override. It's derived by the chain itself, right? It's checking for it, so it doesn't make any sense. And that alone, just that little check, made it, like really just one line, made loading or making this override the save time from 1200 milliseconds, so 1.2 seconds, to 200 milliseconds. For my American friends, that is now you also use milliseconds. That's the one thing that the US still, I'm glad that they follow time. But because it's milliseconds, you know, I thought would be. But they also use millimeters for some, like cameras and other things that I cannot say, otherwise the video might get flagged. M for Material X. Enable blackbody and random float nodes. These are supported now with Material X 1.38.8 in Blender 4.1. So blackbody and random float supported in Material X. S for Sculpt. Oh, Sean Kim has also been on fire, on a roll lately, because not only changes here but also in the UI. Sculpt. Add a global automasking propagation steps property. This pull request adds the ability for the propagation steps value for certain automasking settings to be applied globally instead of using the per brush attribute. Previously, the flag settings were stored at the brush, and the global level, the propagation steps would always change the brush attribute even when using the global menu. Super nice that this is fixed. Not only that, but also added per brush input samples. So, and this makes so much sense because the input samples for some brushes you want it to be super precise, super like detailed, but some brushes you don't care as much, you can just be more loose. And this property now is per brush, well, can be per brush. So nice. U for user interface. A bunch of user interface changes. Okay, this one, let's bring its emoji time, because this feature has been requested by the community for ages. At some point it made it into Blender, but it was added without much review. There were some discussions regarding the UI, the placement, the icon size was wrong. They were like it didn't get the proper review when it made it to Blender, so it was removed right away, right after, like after a day or two, and the community went into panic mode, because understandably, if a long-awaited feature gets added and then it's like, oh sorry, we didn't review it properly, and then it gets removed, although it's not like it was in any release for any amount of like releases. It was on a development branch, but we know the community very eager to test the latest Blender, which is appreciated because that's how bugs are found and fixed. But yeah, this feature, ladies and gentlemen, is add a gizmo button for the lock camera to view. A very small one. Alright, come. Cal, what is it? I better just show you. The option to lock the camera to view is under view, and then it says camera to view. With this enabled, you can go into the camera view, and then when you move the camera, it will, well, when you move the view, it would move the camera, and that's it. This setting, apparently on other software, it's on by default. I'm not a huge fan of this being on by default because I don't want to lose the position the layout that I made so much love and attention. But yeah, so this option is off by default, and sometimes it is handy to enable it, but people have been requested for this to be easier and faster to tweak, to adjust. This icon now does that. It is a new toggle that is in the viewport, and you can see at a glance if it's on or off. That's it. That's the whole feature. But for some reason, I mean, you also get this outline which is red. Also weird that is red, like it was an error. I don't know maybe we could use another color for this. But this is how Blender tells you that this is locked or not. This is unlocked. And also you may have noticed that the icon for the camera changed, because with this icon becoming an outline and then this slightly more attention grabber field icon style in place, it kind of made sense to update the camera icon too. So it will be outline when it's not, and field when it is, which is kind of easy to tell that you are in camera view. First we have the indicator up here, then you have this kind of ugly dotted lines around it, you have this passepartout around it, so it's hard to not know that you're in camera view. However, if you're zoomed in, maybe you could miss it. It's mainly for consistency. Although if we wanted consistency, the hands should also be outlined unless you press on them, and the same with the zoom icon. But anyway, people have been requesting this for a while. Is the switch between ortho and perspective staying? Yeah, why not? What's wrong with it? It's a toggle that for people using the, like, well, if you use a trackpad or a laptop or a bad keyboard, or you don't have the numpad to press 5, it's nice to have it. All right, next. Make the icon lock highlight blue to match the UI when used. We tried that. We tried that one. You can actually look in the patch by Harley, which was inspired by his own patch long time ago. Sorry for blinding you here. You can see it in action here. This is a test that was done, and even though it is consistent with the rest of the UI in Blender, it was a bit too much in your face because the size of these icons is bigger than these buttons. And if you do it for the lock icon, you also have to do it for the camera view. So that would mean that whenever you are in camera view, you will have this huge blue icon here, which was a bit too much in your face. So that's why it was decided to go with a more muted field icon instead. But thanks for mentioning it. It's a nice. What else? Oh, Harley also added, well, this is technically not a UI change. This is a image editor change. However, this feature, it's surprised that it didn't exist before. Have you ever had the need for speed? Well, mainly to speed up your rotation or flipping an image in the image editor. Well, wait no more, it is here. Harley implemented image rotate. Clap, clap, clap. Let me clap for this. Oh, no, not that kind of clapping. What kind of clapping? It's a clapping with a cat. This adds a transform and flip operators to the image editor. Something so you would think that it's kind of, there you go, and an image, transform, flip horizontally, so flip vertically, rotate clockwise, counterclockwise, or 180, so upside down. Nice. Tree view. Oh, this is there are a number of changes to the tree view. The tree view is the widget that is used for the asset catalogs, the bone collection, grease pencil layers, grease pencil 3 layers. Well, grease pencil 2 doesn't have layers, so no, wait, it does have. What it doesn't have is layer groups. Anyways, node panels and light linking. They all use this widget called tree view, which looks like a UI list, but it's not yet. But the idea is to replace it to replace UI lists. Well, there was a behavior that was a bit confusing. Every time you click on on the parent of any item, it would expand whatever is inside. That can get very annoying. So now it doesn't do it anymore. You have to click on the arrow to expand. And speaking of which, the tree view now looks slightly different, and the padding and the indentation is so much more clear now. Well, this is why I hate GIFs, because I can't stop this GIF. But basically, one of these images, now I can watch it. It's nerve-wracking that it stops. It doesn't stop when I want to. Okay, let me. Anyways, let's see. So bones and bones 06, when they are aligned, is the wrong image. It's because they shouldn't be aligned. This bones 006 is actually a child of bones, so it should be indented. Anyway, let's go to, I think there was a picture here. Yeah, okay, this is how it should look. This is the final result, even with this ugly star icon. Not related to this patch though, I just felt that urge to say it when I saw it. The bones collection called bones has bones 006 and 001. These are siblings, these are child of bones, and they're at the same level and indented. When the collection has children, then you can see the arrow, and when not, you don't. So much more readable, similar to how the outliner does it. And you may have noticed this also uses now the chevron icons, which is now consistent across everywhere in Blender. Now the triangles is used, it's no longer used, and the chevron icon is used because it is more readable at a glance, and they all communicate the same. They all communicate that there is content to be collapsed or expanded. So it's for consistency using the same icon everywhere, and also in some cases it also fixes alignment, like in this case where it was a bit too high and now it's at the bottom. And when used in these kind of layouts, it now also makes more sense. It's using the actual like a sub panel. Although, to be honest, these background images shouldn't use this anymore. It should use the actual sub panel, maybe the layout panel API for Python API. Have you updated your add-ons by? Well, no, you shouldn't, because updating add-ons is not recommended until the beta. So next, icons. Speaking of the spreadsheet and the, well, many other parts of Blender, there are new icons. Yeah, the face corner. I don't know if you remember, but the face corner in Blender 4 used to use the icon for, let's see, do I have Blender 4.0? Yes, of course I have Blender 4.0. And if I go to geometry nodes, the icon for face corner, I don't know if you ever realize, but it was the node snapping icon. The default size of the Blender UI is so tiny. I can't use it in 1.0 anymore. Anyways, yeah, it was the the snapping node XY, which, if you ask me, we don't need icons for this, really. It's then the snapping option for a node. I mean, if it's amazing that the node snapping has so many options, yet there's no snapping when you want to resize a node. Anyway, that's why it needs an icon, because it can be drawn only. Yeah, okay, maybe it makes sense here, but anyways, this icon is no longer shared. Now it has a proper icon. The same with points, the point cloud. It used to use the icon for particle points, which is not really related. Now it uses its own icon. The mask modifier now uses the new mask icon, which I'm going to mention. It's used now across all the uses of masks, and the new view lock, unlock, and the unfill camera icon by Alexei Adamitsky. Thank you, Alexei, for making these icons that are now used in the viewport. Next, these changes are from today, actually. So if you downloaded the Blender experimental builds last night or like today, these changes are not there yet, because they were merged like 6 hours ago. So you might have to wait a few hours. The buildbot updates automatically around 2 a.m. I think, at least Central European time. So that would be in 8 hours from now. Okay, next, add channels region toggle in animation editors. Did you know that every animation editor, well, the timeline has it off by default, but every animation editor, right, has this region called channels. The graph editor has it, so when you insert a keyframe, you have, you know this. Well, every editor that has this channels list had a toggle for it, but the animation editors didn't have a toggle. So you will have to go here and then expand it and collapse it manually. Well, there is an operator for that it's been used already for ages everywhere. It's nothing really new. It was just never exposed. So this is more a fix than a new feature. It's exposing the show regions channels operator in these editors: the dope sheet, the graph editor, the NLA, and the timeline, similar to how the video sequence editor has it already. So nice to see this here exposed here, because it means that not only this is accessible, or it will be visible from the search, but also makes it so you can right click and add a shortcut. So I can assign the shortcut, I don't know, let's say F7, whatever. So now I press F7 and I can use a shortcut to toggle this. Nice. Such a small thing. It was overseen probably. So thank you, Nika, for noticing and making a patch for it. And there are a few more patches by Nika. This one moves the onion skin properties inside annotation panel. This is also, it's a fix more than a feature, because the onion skin panel in the video sequence editor was its own separate panel instead of being a sub panel of the annotations. It didn't make sense. It looked different as the rest of Blender. The custom properties panel has been, the alignment of the icons here has been tweaked. There was a gap here in the properties in the viewport. Here, when you add custom properties on an object. So every object, It's also a bit weird that the custom properties panel is not shown unless you have custom properties. Like, what's stopping the panel, the custom properties panel, from being here? So you can actually add. Is it because we are trying to, we don't want to have operators here, but we already do have operators here? Anyways, you have to go to the object, add custom properties, and then this will be exposed here. I guess it's so we don't duplicate the UI for editing, and you edit in this editor and you only visualize here. However, for adding the first, well, no, if you add the first, then you wouldn't be able, no, okay, never mind, makes sense. When you edit settings here, they get reflected here, and the animation, like when you are animating these values, you can only animate by right click, adding manually an animation, or pressing I. It doesn't have this kind of toggles, but the UI was making room for these toggles regardless, so it was using, there was primed real space here that could be used for making the widgets bigger, basically wider. So now it has been fixed. Next, speaking of the mask icons, Shan Kim made it so the mask icon is now consistent everywhere. This icon has been used for the mask modifier, mask everywhere in Blender, and now it is consistent in the UI as well. When you are sculpting, for example, let's go to sculpt mode. Well, now there you go. So this icon over here. And also this is related to another change, which I'm gonna make my Blender bigger so you see it. It is now possible to see at a glance if masking has been enabled or not. Super nice usability improvement. How do you know if masking is on or off? Well, because the masking icon is off. It has the outline and the circle is filled. If I enable any kind of masking, like topology masking or face sets or cavity, then this icon changes. So you can see now if this has been tweaked or not. And if any change actually makes it so the icon changes color. So you can see before actually opening the popover, before you had to go open the popover, check if anything was on or off, but now it doesn't. So nice. Same way that the object visibility and selectability popover changes icon when one of these settings differs. So yeah, nice. Next change. The edit source operator for when developer extras is open now prints the location of the file, so you can actually see what you are editing. So this is a setting that Blender has in when developer extras is on. You can edit a file, for example. Well, you are part of the UI by right click, edit source, and now there should be here editing. This is the file, so you can see which line and which file you're editing. So you can double click, right click, copy, and then open the file in somewhere else. Super nice. But you can actually do that already, the editing in a external. If I go to scripting, if you want to edit a text in an external software, you can click on edit externally here. So when you save the file, of course, it needs to save somewhere. Otherwise, what kind of file are you giving to the other software? The confirm dialogues that I mentioned before, this is the actual patch that makes it happen. The operator confirm dialog changes, this, well, I think it's better if I just move. Yeah, this is how you can make it look. It doesn't look like this right now in Blender. but you can make something that used to look like this, just very small and simple. Now you can make it in your add-ons, your scripts, you can make it custom. And also you can change the titles, for example, in the operator itself and in the API. And last but not least, the operator to select a font now will show folders, will filter folders as well. So you can actually see sometimes the fonts, well, in I don't know on Windows, but on Linux, the many fonts are inside folders, and the folder filter was off, so you wouldn't see anything. Would be empty. Now it does not. So thank you, Richard. Next, U4 USD. 2 changes. 1. Point instancer import support by Ashley Raglis. Add support for static point instancing support. Import. Add a new USD point instancer raider class to import USD geometry point instancer primitives as point clouds with geometry nodes modifiers that use the instance on points geometry nodes to instance the collections containing the prototype geometry. What a multiverse of features. Nice. USD importing point clouds with geometry nodes modifiers. Nice. Awesome. Committed by Michael from NVIDIA and written by Ashley. Awesome. And another one is one by Michael. Add basic support for on-import USD hooks. Oh, nice. This is big for pipelines, for studio pipelines. When defining an on-import, well, you can now define an on-import function in the BPY types USD hooks. When defined, it will be invoked on import end job. So it will, you can attach, you can run a bunch of functions, whatever your pipeline needs after the import process hook. Nice. V for Video Sequence Editor. 3 changes by Adas. 1. Replace subsample 3x3 filter by a general box filter. It's part of the overall improved filtering situation. This big task for filtering. So replace a sample 3x3 strip scaling filter with a general box filter. The 3x3 filter is really a box filter, hard-coded to the 3x3 size, and as such it works pretty well when downscaling images, but starts to break down and introduce aliasing at other scaling factors. Also, when scaling up or scaling down by less than 3x using a total of 9 samples, it's a bit of overkill and hurts performance. Nice. So instead, use the amount of n by m samples needed by looking at scaling the factors of the XY axis. In the PR are some images. Ooh, nice. Oh, nice. Old, new. Damn. That's kind of a big deal. Nice. Damn. Nice one, Aras. And 2 more. Next. Bilinear upscaling no longer adds transparent border around the image. Oh my. This has been such a headache for the longest time. Also part of the other process. So here's throwing an image in the video sequence editor that is 6 times larger resolution. Note that black outline appears around the edges. This black, I don't know if you see it in the stream, but it's very noticeable. No longer here. Nice. And finally, this is related to another patch that is not here yet, and it would be nice to have for 4.1. So I think I'm gonna, but the reviewer was Yorun, and he's at a conference, Vulkan conference. So, which is good. That's where developers get together and talk about the future and the present of Vulkan. So that means that the patch maybe could be reviewed, well, this other patch, which is not here yet, but it will, nah, spoiler, let's not spoil. Let's look at the changes that were done by Aras in the video sequence editor, but it's related to a change that is coming in the image editor, vector scope. So the image vector scope is getting some visual updates, which I mentioned here. Make the video sequence vertex scope match the color, the look fairly closely. Use the same scaling factor instead of trying to use all the texture space. Instead of drawing an hexagonal area between the color primary pure and 75% saturation save points, draw a circle with color background and 5 inner rings, and also indicate 75% saturation primaries as wire rectangles with a text label. How does it look? Like this. So similar, basically. So it's like eye candy. It's like beautiful. 2024, and this is, how old is this? Reminds me of one of those old like video games. Super nice. Anyways, now this is how the hexagon looks like. Nice. Beautiful. Let's see. Oh, actually there is one more thing. Well, not the one more thing, but just one more thing. In W for the window manager, WM window manager, and this change has to do with the autosave. This is handled by the window manager, that's why it's at the very end. Autosave, have you ever noticed that autosave would save? It would be so eager to keep you safe, your files safe, that it would save even though you have saved before. Like if you hit Control S, right, Command S to save, and there was another autosave happening at the very same time, you could, and your file is big and it takes a second to save or a few seconds to save, you would be stuck in this saving mode. Well, when you save now, manually save, like Command S, Control S, the timer for the autosave will be reset. So it doesn't, it's not stupid, basically. No, not stupid. It's very proactive. It's not proactive anymore. It's gonna wait, it's gonna chill. Okay, you saved, I'm not gonna freak out and not autosave, which is awesome. This is related to another change that is coming or will be coming. It's an experiment by Jack that improves the heuristics basically under the autosave algorithm. As in, do I need to autosave, or when do I autosave? Should I start autosaving in the middle of your very precious high precision painting and sculpting in Blender? Maybe not. So this it's not there yet. There is a patch for it, but I hope it makes it in soon, because that way it could happen. People have been reporting that they are sculpting and then Blender stutters, and that is because of the autosaving in the background. Anyways, this is everything I have to share. How far, how late am I? 1 hour, 5. Let's do 5 questions, if there's any. Are there any questions? Yes, 9. All right, let's go. Let's go to the very bottom. But there are 2 comments. Let's answer all of them. There is only 2 more episodes. We are in 248. Let's answer all of them. Who needs a voice tomorrow anyway? First question. Aurelio says, "Hey Pablo, thanks for making the process of development such an exciting show." Hey. Thanks for calling this exciting. It is exciting. It is exciting. It gives development a whole other perspective. I only have one question about a mild issue with right-click select. Not the website, not the Blender feature. Do you know why a post will get stuck in processing after it was public for a while and was voted on? It's invisible. Some automatic moderation system. I already had such an issue before and you already answered it. It was due to untrusted external links. This newer post of mine obeys the rules that I know of, but let me know. Let's see. It's still processing. I am an admin, that's why I can see it. Okay. Another thing, it has a video, and for video we use an external, like running video encoding in our server would be too heavy. So in this website we pay for another service to encode the videos for us and then send it back to us, and then we put it in here. You wouldn't think that a AVI JPEG video of 100 megs, they need encoding, right? So that process is done in a separate service. So for the time being, when you publish something, the video is encoded, the post goes into processing. However, it could happen that either the external service is too slow, or we're too stupid and our code it sucks to make it change the status back. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to edit this in the admin, and then I'm going to set it to published again and hope that it will be fixed. So let's see. Save, and now this should be public again. Nice. And to make it show up, I'm gonna upvote it, and then not downvote it, but remove the unvote so it refreshes it. We need to remake this website. But yeah, that's the reason why. Because we use a separate service that is paid. Actually, I don't pay. Francesco pays for this out of his own pocket. It's insane. For so many years. It is not a lot of money, but still, it's like, luckily, because not many people are uploading videos, but you don't think about those things. It's like, just add video support. Yeah, well, you have to encode it, or you have to put it somewhere, you have to send it somewhere. Yeah, okay, so next, hey, question about the UI. Why are there still global transform settings among active tool settings? Seems very obviously misplaced. Seems like a no-brainer to put this among the... Hey, we talked about this before, and I gave the feedback already. Or not. I have a deja vu on this. Displacement is especially evident. Did I? Well, these options they are not all related to transform. They depend on the active tool. So yeah, not all of them make sense there. No. Well, and again, these are depending on the active tool, and the active tool doesn't influence this. These are other, these are related to the mode. Nuno Alex says, hi Pablo, hope you're well. Hope you are well, and you decide to keep going on BlenderToday live for long. I would like to gather your opinion about this Blender feature suggestion. It's basically a node system for Blender to manage scene data procedurally and unlock full Blender potential. Something like Solaris or Katana currently allows. Gather your opinion about this Blender feature suggestion. Let's see. Stage scene nodes, a proposal for improved scene organization and flexibility. It's a bit long to read in the middle of the live stream that is already over time, but if this has to do with like scene nodes, collection nodes, this is something that it's been in the plans since the beginning of geometry nodes, even before geometry nodes actually. But it is like at the end of the day, we want most things to be nodes, right? Editable as nodes, but in an accessible way. But yeah, we'll keep it open to read it, but I can't. It's a bit long to read in the live stream, sorry. Sistine says, hello Pablo, how was your day? I hope it was good. I was sad to hear about the end of BlenderToday, but I was wondering if you will still maybe do special case BlenderTodays, Blender once in a while. That's a nice thing about the word today, is that it applies to any day. It's not Blender weekly, that would be too much, but today is like every day is today. For special updates like the new extensions platform or larger additions to Blender. Apologies if you mentioned something like this earlier. Thanks for all the work you do the past years on BlenderToday and everything else you do and the devs have done. Thank you, Sestine. I actually have said this exact thing when I announced it last week, so it's a good thing that you mention it because we think alike. The extensions platform, it's a project that Dalai has been working on together with Campbell, and then Francesco also worked on it, and Anna, the web developer, backend web developer, also worked on it. I worked on it as a UI, and Martin is now also working on it, front-end web developer. So it's a huge project that deserves its own video. I don't know if it's gonna be a live stream or if it's gonna be just a regular video that we just upload to the to Blender Dev or here, but it definitely needs its own video. And the same for larger additions to Blender. I think they all depend. They depend on how big they are, of course, but they deserve their own videos. I'm not gonna stop making videos, these kind of videos, as in these feature-specific videos. But not on a weekly live stream. That's the difference. The making weekly, like having the commitment to making it weekly sometimes forces you to talk about things you wouldn't otherwise tackle in a feature-specific video, which is great. I'm gonna miss that actually, because it's weekly, right? So every week is different. Sometimes some other topics come up in the shape of comments, or it's just something it's removed or added that brings a conversation of another area of Blender. So that I'm gonna miss. But I'm not gonna stop making videos for big features or maybe even releases. So that would still be here. So thank you, and thanks everybody for the very, very, very nice, lovely, tear producing comments that you left on the last week's video. Okay, all right, let's be happy, uplifting. Reanimate says, hi Pablo, out of curiosity, would it be possible when rendering with Eevee to get a progressive rendering displayed on the render view window panel? Currently when rendering with Eevee, it's totally blank until the render are fully finished to display the render output. I think it's a limitation of how... I wonder if Eevee Next in some way can bypass that, but no, the way GPU, stuff was sent to the GPU and read back, I think it's a limitation. I wanna... Maybe Eevee Next is different and can send like samples back for certain passes. But even just a render of the, like an OpenGL render of the viewport and then replace it with the passes, that would already give more feedback, because right now it's just blank until the end. But yeah. Also, is there a way to get the geometry nodes output displayed so it can be used as drivers? Good question. So to transform an object and use that object's... I don't know, you tell me. Have you tried it? As a driver of something else? Well, if you try the position of another, of a vertex, and no, you can't parent to vert. Huh. Maybe, because you can change attributes, and attributes can be used for, I don't know, it's a bit late for me to test it now, but yeah, test it. Eric Chu says, hello Pablo, we will miss you and the great Mondays. Thank you. Just an improvement tip, wish for the principal BSDF. It's nice that it's small and cute now, but it would be great if when I come with an output to the specular input, it would pop automatically when I'm hovering over it. It makes me crazy that I have to open it first. When I come with an output to the specular input, you mean, let's see. So let's go to shading. You mean that if I have a image, if I come to here, that it would auto open? That would be super nice. Yeah, it's a bit annoying that you have to go here and then connect. Yeah, it would be nice though, but wouldn't it be a bit like if your mouse goes over here, it will start opening all of them like the same way that if I go do this? That would also be annoying. Like you're dragging this and the whole thing pops. Maybe if you leave it for a second, then ploop. Maybe, right? Like these don't have a hover state. This, for example, has a hover state, right? The colors change slightly. So maybe if this had a hover state, well, first to know which one to open, because Blender's panels, these ones, don't have a hover state, which is, I find it annoying because there are shortcuts that apply to this. You can press A to open a panel. So if something is affected by a shortcut, when you hover those items, they should somehow react. And with that being said, maybe if we drag over here, it could hover. It could maybe it could be like 80% opacity, and when you mouse over, or 90%, and when you mouse over, it's 100% opacity, so it's slightly lighter. And then if you leave it here for a second, like a tooltip, you wait for it, and then it could open. That way you prevent this popping up all the. Maybe that would be a nice behavior. But yeah, I see what you mean. I actually ran into that the other day. I was doing a live stream in the Spanish live stream on Twitch, and I was using the node, and I found myself like dragging it here and expecting it to do something. Okay, next. And the last one by Namdambud says, Oi, Pablo, I just want to say thank you for your help. You couldn't know this, but your live streams have given me every time, every week, when nothing else but seeing something I love grow and evolve needs to matter. It was a bit of a heartbreak hearing it would end. You better believe I'm tuning into BlenderToday. Yeah, the Spanish version of BlenderToday, BlenderToday, is I'm gonna continue making it because I think it's, I don't know, it's fair, and also it's a separate project. I do it at home in my own time. It's just, maybe it's making it on flip-flop that makes it different, but also because they don't really have any other source of news unless they go to the website and translate the website, the Dev Talk forums. I want to take this moment to, if you really intend to end the show, ask for your blessings for the community to continue it. I'm barely beginning with C++ and Python. I'm probably not qualified yet, so I'm asking for the community. I'm not qualified at all with C++ and Python, and I've been doing it. I promise if I do it, I won't call it Blender Today. That's yours and Blender's. I just worry because we can only get a peek inside the Blender Foundation through you. You provide something that a forum or meeting could never replace. Now, on a less somber note, okay. So I said it already several times that I hope this concept would get picked up by other open source projects, like sharing what's new every week. The same applies to Blender. If Blender stops doing it, like Blender Foundation, Blender Institute stops doing whatever we are doing, community should feel free to take over. Of course, there's a few exceptions. At some point, the Blender network closed, and immediately after there was a project from the community called Blender Network, and I was like, yeah, maybe don't call it that, maybe call it something else, or the same way, because it's a bit like if someone opens a Blender Cloud service that offers similar services to Blender Cloud, it's kind of like stealing the SEO, the reach that Blender had. So calling it Blender Today, maybe don't if you can. But yeah, it doesn't have to be Blender either. It can be 3D news, can be CG news, can be open source news, open source graphics news. Maybe it could. Actually, on Linux, there is the Linux news channel that I follow, the Linux experiment here, that I follow, and the work that he does on like sharing what's new. I haven't never seen him mention Blender, but it's the equivalent of what Blender Today could be in a way. And there is like a weekly Windows, like if I go, no, Windows, sorry, Windows, Linux news. Every now and then there is like Linux, okay, making fun of, what is the Linux? Here, Linux open source news. So at some point it goes through everything that is new, like the Linux kernel updates, Mint, Fedora, GNOME, all the patches, like even like it's basically the equivalent to what I do in Blender Today, but for Linux. It's super nice. Maybe something like what this person does, or maybe we can ask him to cover. No, that would be too much. But this concept, the way he does it, is super nice. I can share the link if you want to. I'm not endorsing it, just in case. I'm just saying that I follow his updates, and I don't watch every single video because not all of them apply to what I like. Sometimes I like to hear what's new in Fedora or GNOME, but at least some of the ones I watch, they're nice. And so yeah, anybody feel free to continue. I don't see anything wrong with it. It's Blender. People could be doing it already in short form, way more accessible instead of a 1 hour live stream. All right, and the last comment now on a less somber note. How is the planning for advanced simulations in geometry nodes going? I may or may not be studying simulation systems and physics in general, and when geometry nodes gets easy physics, it's going to explode, literally explode. I'm excited. Well, I'm excited that you are learning also, that you're studying it, because also getting into C++ and Python. No, as far as I know, there is not big development on this area yet, as the main developers of geometry nodes have been working on other parts like baking, which is related to simulation though, and like Jacques-Luc, and today I mentioned he was working on baking stuff. Then there is the Gizmo project as well for tools. Hans has been working on UI cleanups, mesh stuff, sculpting, attributes, all that system. So I don't think, well, unless it comes from the community, I don't think we're gonna see, unfortunately, anything in the near future, like for 4.1 or 4.2. I can't talk about 4.2 though. Anyways, that is all for today. A bit longer, 1.5 hours, but we have to make the best, the most, and the most for this few remaining episodes. I hope you had a nice weekend, and I hope you had a fun Blender today. I'm wearing my 20 years t-shirt, which now that the Blender store is closed, actually no one else can get this. So if you had it, if you bought it when it was available, feel special. Thanks everyone again for your sweet messages today, and in like personal messages and the ones in the video, in the last video. I want to make this ending of Blender Today a celebration, so we're gonna celebrate the 250 episode with something special. Maybe that will be in 2 weeks time, right? Next one is the 12th, and then there is the 19th, so there's plenty more to see. Next week we're going to talk about 4.1 going beta and 4.2 going alpha. I don't expect anything big that is waiting for 4.2 except Eevee Next. I wonder if they are going to change the name already like they did previously to make it name default Eevee as default, but yeah, I hope you had a I'm reading the chat here, by the way. I hope everybody has a nice weekend and a very, very nice week ahead, however you spend it. If you're blending, making something that makes you happy, 3D, 2D, 2.5D, any D. Without further ado, have a nice week. Watch out your ear holes. I don't think it's too loud. Or maybe it is loud. That was loud. Or at least OBS marked on the yellow/red. Thanks everyone. I will see you again next week. Same place, same time for another Blender Today live.